Welcome to ChatNFL, the self-proclaimed only NFL talk show backed by artificial intelligence. I'm your host, Bradley Hamilton, joined by co-host and football veteran watcher, Pete Shinn. Join us with the guidance of AI as we break down this upcoming NFL season in a way you've never experienced before, artificially. Today, we're going to be going over the AFC East with the reigning Buffalo Bills as their division champions of last year, breaking down who some of the up-and-comers in the division might be to challenge them at the top. But before we go into their losses and additions in the offseason, who they drafted, and our insights, we're going to be talking about last year with the AFC East with Pete Shinn.
Well, Bradley, I'll tell you, the AFC East was an exciting conference last year, an exciting division in the AFC, and I expect it to be just as exciting this year. Of course, the Buffalo Bills went into the season with the intention of kicking in the door to the Super Bowl, but came up short for the second season in a row against the Kansas City Chiefs, the eventual champs. And then you had Miami Dolphins surprising with a surprisingly effective offense led by Tua Tagovailoa. However, his 3 on-field concussions during the season certainly led to more than a little concern, which continues on into this season. Then you had New England, who was struggling with, frankly, an inexperienced coaching staff. And as we'll see, that may not have improved in the offseason. We'll talk about that more with the Patriots. But when then finally you look at the Jets, they looked great at midseason last year and then suffered a pretty complete and total meltdown in the second half of the season. Will they be able now with Aaron Rodgers to turn around their fortunes and go from worst to first?
It's an interesting question and an interesting breakdown that we'll be getting into later. But we have to start at the top with the Buffalo Bills. As you had mentioned, they lost in the AFC Championship game, going 13-3. It's a pretty substantial record to have. Their losses, players they lost in this offseason, linebacker Tremaine Edmunds being sort of one of the big names, had over 100 tackles in 13 games, defended a lot of passes, got a pick. They lose Isaiah McKenzie, a wide receiver they also like to utilize sometimes in the run game. 4 receiving touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 475 scrimmage yards. And their last sort of loss they have is also on offense with Devin Singletary, the other running back they split carries with James Cook. He had just south of 1,100 total scrimmage yards with 6 total touchdowns. So I would say the losses for the Bills in this offseason, with a focus on offense, you also lose sort of a leader in the linebacker room with Tremaine Edmunds.
Well, in addition, they've got a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator. So the Bills' entire coaching staff, with the exception of Sean McDermott, has kind of a new flavor on one hand. On the other hand, the new offensive coordinator is Ken Dorsey, who was their quarterback's coach and was responsible for getting Josh Allen to play a whole lot better. In fact, under Dorsey's tutelage, Dorsey, a former quarterback himself, helped Josh Allen make the single greatest improvement year over year in quarterback rating in NFL history.
Really?
That's a fact. Wow. So he's well qualified as an OC.
Put him in the driver's seat.
Oh, sure, that's what they did.
Yeah.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, they lost long-term assistant Leslie Frazier. And Sean McDermott will now be calling the defenses. In fact, there is no defensive coordinator on the Buffalo Bills website. Sean McDermott, a longtime defensive guru, will be calling the plays himself. All of that lends itself to some concerns about the coaching staff. Simply, you got to ask, can Sean McDermott run the defense and be the chief problem solver of the team? And so that would be one of my concerns with the Bills. Now, from the coaching staff side, one interesting fact, the Buffalo Bills have the single largest strength and conditioning staff in the AFC East, at least those listed on their website. And so you have to think that that's a focus, and a good one, of the Buffalo Bills going forward, because they certainly are a tough team to beat in December and January.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good that they have such a consistent strength and conditioning coach. I think player safety is sort of reliant upon that role in the building, and to have as much trust and confidence in that team as possible, I think is important.
Well, and of course, the Bills demonstrated the value of their strength conditioning and medical staff.
When they resuscitated Damar Hamlin live on the field.
Indeed. And shockingly enough, he may actually play football.
Yeah, honestly, one of their key additions, we'll be talking a bit more about Damar Hamlin. I think it's an absolute testament to his willingness and love of the game, the coaching staff to save him, the medical staff at the hospital who treated him. And it was just an overall, it's an inspiring story.
It is an inspiring
especially
story.
for a strength and conditioning coach.
And strength and conditioning staff.
Excuse me.
So, you mentioned that they had some additions. Let's hear about them.
All right, so key additions that stood out to me, they pick up offensive guard Connor McGovern. He is definitely known in the pass blocking game. His run blocking may be a little bit more limited, but I think he's still good to have on that interior line to protect Josh Allen. They pick up safety Taylor Rapp. He had 92 tackles, broke up about 6 passes, and had 2 picks. I think he's a great add for that safety room because, but they managed to retain Jordan Poyer. There was talks of him leaving. They got him back. They have Damar Hamlin there at safety. I think getting a third really good safety, what I think they have here, really flushes out that secondary room and really, I think, allows Sean McDermott to use that defense in a way that he would probably want to in that deep coverage field.
Well, and in fairness, they do have Von Miller coming back. And Von Miller is a cagey and wily veteran who is going to be utilized, I believe, as more of a player coach than perhaps the fearsome defensive end that he has been all these years. He's coming off a very serious injury. He's not a kid anymore. And whether or not he's going to be able to continue to be the disruptive force on the field that he has been in the past is certainly an open question. However, being able to utilize his skills and knowledge to help develop the talent that the Bills have, I think that's something that Sean McDermott is going to look to Von Miller to help him do.
Von Miller is a great reminder because I had mentioned losing Tremaine Edmonds was like losing some of the face of the linebacker room, some of the leadership. But Von Miller, he's a natural leader. His history in the NFL, his legacy, just how he approaches and loves the game. So I guess you mentioning that does remind me that, there is no leadership truly lost on that defensive side of the ball. I think the key players that bring that team together are still there, and that's what really matters. And the last addition that I want to mention is to replace Devin Singletary, they grabbed Damian Harris off of the Patriots. I think this is a running back that you'd go to if you want to split carries. He's a perfect split carry back. He only had 462 rushing yards, but he averaged 4.4 yards a carry. So while his numbers aren't jumping out in terms of just scale, what he does put on the field is productive.
Well, I would say, based on what you've shared with me and what I've seen, it looks to me like the Buffalo Bills are just going to mainly run it back again this year.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, and their draft also sort of hints at it, going heavy with the offense early on. If you'd allow me to break that down,
Of course.
I'd like to go in the round 1. They trade up, they grab Dalton Kincaid, tight end. He was named by a lot of people on a lot of mocks as one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the draft.
Sure.
His numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. 70 receptions, 890 yards, 8 touchdowns. His catch radius and his ability to move the chains and get the ball moving, combined with Dawson Knox's ability to find the end zone with Josh Allen, that's a duo that can work really favorably for that offense.
And any team that has 2 stud tight ends already has an enormous advantage in the NFL. So that's a big get.
I think that's a huge. That helps secure your future. And in case of securing future, they also picked up in the second round this offensive guard Osiris Torrance out of the University of Florida. He could be a day 1 starter. I don't know if he will need to be with this Bills offensive line. But I think the fact that he has never given up a sack in college, which is about 1,400 pass attempts, the fact that he's never given up a sack, if he doesn't become a starter in year 1, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't in year 2.
Well, I would suspect that they're going to put him on the field right away.
To protect Allen like that with that level of consistency that they're going to hope to expect, it really, it's just more and more help for that offense that was already pretty lights out.
Sure.
For the most of the year. So out of those draft picks, it's definitely a focus on offense. And the fact that they don't have a defensive coordinator, they only pick up a little bit on defense. I think they're happy and confident with their defense. Getting Von Miller back, as you said, probably helps with that.
It probably helps, but I agree with you that they're definitely confident in their defense. Whether or not that confidence is going to be justified, I think, is an open question.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that they addressed the safety room in a way that will help against the elite receivers they'll be having to face in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I think you need in this division guys that can just cover that the deep field well enough, because you always have to worry about the plays like that with those receivers.
And not just with Waddle and Hill either.
No, of course
But if you take a look at the AFC, the other folks in the AFC East, particularly the Jets have an unbelievable roster of receiving talent.
Yeah, and they did add to that, and we'll be breaking that down here in just a little bit. But my main insight for the Bills is, apart from just, add on to the offense, you bolster that, you try to secure its future with these draft picks, and you just sort of hope the defense is, I'd say, improved, getting Von Miller back and addressing that safety. So, I think they're going to try to run it back through the offense.
Well, I think they will too, and I think they will probably have a great deal of success, similar to the kind of success they had last year, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Certainly not, but a repeat just seems sort of likely. But with the Bills addressed and taken care of, it's time to break down the almost front runner, the contender for the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins. They finished last year with a 9-8 record, losing to the Bills in the wild card with a Skylar Thompson-led effort, 34-31, I believe.
It was a heck of a game.
It was a very good game.
And Miami outperformed in that game. It was a January game in Buffalo. And Miami darn near won it, which was pretty extraordinary in and of itself.
I think it sends a message going into this offseason. And the losses they had in this offseason on their roster, I would not consider substantial.
Like what?
They lose starting tight end Mike Gesicki, who, he was fine. He picked up 5 touchdowns. That's good numbers. But, didn't have 400 yards receiving, only had 32 receptions. In the defensive side, they lose linebacker Elendon Roberts. He had over 100 tackles, 9 of them for a loss, picking up 5 sacks. So you lose some of the presence on your front 7, and you lose your starting tight end. But that's really it for their losses.
Okay. And what about their gains?
Well, their gains is a bit more exciting, I would say. The first one that stands out is cornerback Jalen Ramsey. 18 passes defended last year. That is second in the league. Picks up 4 interceptions last year. Ties his career best. 3 forced fumbles. That's in the top 10 of the league. He also picked up his first career sack by getting 2 of them last year.
Which is interesting because Jalen Ramsey last year was playing for a definitely hobbled L.A. Rams team.
Not as good as they were the year before.
Far from it. So to have that kind of performance on an otherwise questionable team, that really speaks to Jalen Ramsey's skills, and even at his advanced age.
Absolutely. As he's getting older, he's still making his presence felt. He's trying to be the LeBron of cornerbacks. They also pick up quarterback Mike White, the Jets legend, who tried to help them through their implosion of the season at the quarterback room. He had a decent showing with them. I think the Miami Dolphins might need a competent backup quarterback because of the health issues with Tua. So I think getting him is a good move. It's a smart move. And the only real key addition, the only reason I really put him down is just because of that hole at tight end. But they pick up Eric Saubert. He was with the Broncos. He made some plays on special teams, helps fill out that depth. Not huge in the receiving game yet, but I think he can make a name for himself doing it with the Dolphins here.
And a decent blocker, so you can always use a blocking tight end.
Absolutely. They kept Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert in the running back room, so they're keeping that consistent. So building off of that, I think it's what they did with this signing, and I think it's a good idea.
So one of the key additions to defense that you didn't mention was new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. And I'll tell you, Vic Fangio has a terrific reputation as a defensive mind in the NFL for good reason. His defenses are great defenses, historically speaking.
That's why he coordinates them.
And so you could expect Miami's defensive performance to improve this year over last year, and they were already pretty good last year as well.
I liked what I saw from the Miami defense. In that Ravens shootout in the early season, we see some of the highs and lows, but I mean, they were always a fun team to watch. I would say maybe a little scary at some plays in particular.
Yeah, like when Tua Tagovailoa nearly had his head knocked off a few times. Very scary.
Very scary. Made me kind of want to like not watch the game level of scary. It just sort of felt like a sickening feeling. So I really... Oh, yeah, scary stuff. You don't like to see that. But they were fun to watch apart from those horrible moments.
Indeed. Well, I mean, you could say the AFC East last year led the league in
horrifying injuries.
From near-death experiences to grotesque concussions, you can count on that right here in the AFC East.
Yeah. But hopefully we don't see any more of that with this upcoming year.
And if we do see any more of it, let's hope that the broadcasters having to comment while the action is stopped have something to say.
Let's hope the dead air can be kind of filled out a bit. Let's move on from the grotesque and horrifying realities of the NFL and go on to draft stats.
Sure.
Let's go into prospecting.
Yeah, good idea.
In the second round, because in the first round, some things got a little shaky behind closed doors.
So, yeah, that's right. They lost their first-round pick because Steve Ross was punished for trying to get Tom Brady to come down there and play.
Steve Ross, is that general manager or
He's
owner?
The owner. He's the owner.
Owner of the team.
Yes, and the only human raisin, interestingly. If you look at him, he's wrinkled like that.
Jerry, yeah, we got to figure out a fruit for Jerry Jones, because maybe more of a fruit bat, actually. That could be more appropriate.
Sure.
Also, I believe they were trying to do some tampering with Sean Payton as well, because they also are losing a third-round pick in 2024. So that could be for that reason.
So, Steve Ross, you've been a better boy.
You've been a naughty boy. You've been making a better moves. So in the second round, which is basically their first round, they pick up cornerback Cam Smith. He had a very strong 2021, 11 passes defended, 3 interceptions. I'm not in love with this pick because when you have Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard, why do you spend your first pick on another cornerback? To me, that says, hey, we can afford Jalen Ramsey, we can afford Xavier Howard, we cannot afford both for long. So out of those two, out of Ramsey and Howard, whichever one of those has a lesser performance, this guy might just be their inevitable replacement.
If he's good.
If he's good. But, I mean, they can't afford 2 superstars. I don't think they can for long. So
One would think not. But they're not here for a long time.
They're here for a good time.
That's right. They're here for a winning time.
That rang.
And Jalen Ramsey knows all about that.
All about, the chase for the Super Bowl. And so that's really kind of it for Cam Smith. I like his ability to disrupt the pass, and I'm not going to say that he's not good at it. It's clear that he is, but his need on the team right now is just not there. But in the future, I think he could be perhaps a good addition for them.
They make any other draft pickups?
Yeah, there was another one that stood out to me in the third round. They pick up a running back, Devon Shinn, I believe. He's 5'9", he's a little small, but dude is quick and dude knows how to score. He got 2 kickoff return touchdowns in college. He had back-to-back years of double-digit total touchdowns in the receiving and rushing game. And in both of those years, he had consecutive 1,000-yard seasons.
Well, the key thing you mentioned is both in the rushing and the receiving game. Even if he's only 5'9", if he can catch the football and run with it in space, he's a valuable asset.
Absolutely. He might get a little lost in coverage with all the bigger tight ends and linebackers running around, just slips open, picks up an easy first down. So I think he could be utilized very well. So I think he could be one to watch. Because in a running back room where you have Raheem Mostert, you have Jeff Wilson Jr., I think they picked up Myles Gaskin as well. I think he'll be found first on special teams as a possible returner. I think it'd be fun to watch him in the preseason, try to run some returns. And maybe have a couple years to develop the running back skills behind the kind of loaded running back room they have right now. So I think he's going to be fun to watch in the special teams early on and then sort of develop into a running back later.
Sure.
That's sort of their draft run-through for me, is offense.
You know, you could say the same thing about Miami that you said about the Buffalo Bills, which is that from a player personnel perspective, they're largely running it back. And they share some of the same risks that the Bills do with that strategy.
Absolutely.
But there are some teams that aren't exactly running it back. And the next one that we're going to talk about is not one of them because they are running it back. And I'm talking about the New England Patriots, if that's who you're going to talk about next.
That's who I'm planning on talking about next. They unfortunately missed the playoffs last year for the first time since 2008?
Since 2008, long time.
Yeah. So their 2022 record, 8-9. So not even at the 500 mark. So it's sort of a lowest of lows for the Belichick line right now. So they're hoping with this offseason they can sort of bounce back. Their losses in terms of on the roster, they lose Jacoby Myers, the wide receiver. Was their number one receiver, had over 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 thrown interception, if we remember the Raiders game and Chandler Jones. So I don't think wherever he's going, I can't quite remember exactly, I don't think they'll be using him in the passing game. But best of luck to him in the receiving. They also lose Devin McCourty, longtime safety. He retired. Had a solid last year. 71 tackles, 4 interceptions, 8 passes defended. So best of luck to him in his future endeavors. I think Good Morning Football is looking for more McCourtys to add. So I hope you have the best of luck in your career from now. In terms of key additions, who they've added to hopefully boost their team, we're looking at Juju Smith-Schuster, their replacement for Myers. He had 78 receptions, 900 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But he also had 3 fumbles.
Sure.
So I think Myers and Smith-Schuster are both sort of known for some takeaways, some turnovers. So hopefully they work on that and they could Belichick can refine him into the receiver he wants him to be. They also pick up some offensive tackles. Riley Reif being the big one. He's been in the league for just over 10 years. He's had almost 149 starts in about 160 or so games. And they also pick up Calvin Anderson. He's entering his 5th year, had a brief stint with the Patriots as an undrafted free agent, so he's coming back. I think it helps that offensive line and its depth. I think it's good for Jones. I think he's going to appreciate the offensive tackle pickups here.
No question about it. And those are, I think, the most critical pickups and reflect Bill Belichick's personnel philosophy, which is strengthen your offensive line, strengthen your defense.
Yeah. Strong offensive line, strong defensive line. It follows along with his philosophy. So I'm not super surprised by any of these additions, certainly. Their draft was a little interesting to me. It was very much a full defensive focus. So it tells me that Bill Belichick thinks that Mac Jones has the weapons that he needs to succeed, and now it's kind of on him. Because with these defensive picks, it's like, all right, we're addressing our defense first. So in round 1, they go cornerback Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. Had a brief stint with Colorado as well.
Many people thought that was an excellent pick.
I also think it's an excellent pick. I see many people, myself included, see him as an immediate starter on this roster. 4 interceptions, 7 passes defended. His speed and coverage against receivers like Tyreek Hill, I think he can cover this fast, the fastest receivers in the league.
Well, if you can cover Tyreek Hill, you can cover anyone.
That's kind of the...
Because at least last year, no one could cover Tyreek Hill.
It was a real issue trying to stop him. So by grabbing Jalen Ramsey and drafting Christian Gonzalez, they're sort of weeding out the pool of who can take on Tyreek Hill. I think that was a very smart approach by the Patriots. I was thinking I got my teams mixed up.
You did, but also true. I mean, if the Dolphins take Jalen Ramsey
and then drafted,
if they take Jalen Ramsey, then that means New England can't get him and put him on their team, or none of the other teams can. So.
Now the rest of the AFC East is looking for their Jalen Ramsey.
Precisely.
That's what we're trying. Yeah. So Christian Gonzalez, Patriots, Jalen Ramsey.
Yes.
I cannot wait to watch him in some of these upcoming matchups. I think right now we're sort of blessed with the young cornerbacks we have in the league. Sauce Gardner's very good. Derek Stingley Jr. with the Texans. It's very fun to be a fan of defense in the NFL right now. Round 2, they go with a defensive edge in Keon White. I think this guy can bring a lot of disruption. Out of his 54 tackles, 14 were for a loss. He had 7.5 sacks. His ability to make plays in the backfield is something I think the Patriots definitely need. I can't name a single pass rusher that the Patriots have right now. I think they might have had Bud Dupree at one point, but not anymore. I can't even remember. So getting someone like Keon White, I think, is very important for them. And in round 3, they draft this linebacker, sort of safety, but I think he's going to be more of a linebacker for the Patriots. Marte Mapu. He is an interesting player. I think he sort of fits the Belichick, what he looks for. He's comes from a small school. He is sort of lacking in top speed and explosiveness and coverage, but his run support, his ability to read quarterbacks when he's sort of just in the zone within 10 yards is something to look for.
So not necessarily the most physically gifted player, but football smart player.
Undersized, but he has all the technique is basically sort of his art. So he has all the skills that a football player would want, but he just needs to kind of build into it physically.
Well,
is where he's at.
Yeah, and that can be difficult.
It can be difficult, but I think Marte here, I think he has the opportunity to do that. I think he'll
definitely have
he'll follow through on the opportunity to do that.
Well
is what
said.
I meant to say. I think he will not immediately, but have an impact for this Patriots defense within the next 3 years.
So are there any other additions that they had to their team of significance?
Of significance to the Patriots? Nothing that's coming to mind.
Well, I will tell you, they did go ahead and completely revamp their coaching structure. So last year, Belichick, you got to give him credit for this. He's never afraid to experiment. So he took Matt Patricia, who was a long-time defensive coordinator, put him in charge of the offense. And then they took Joe Judge, long-time offensive guy, and put him in charge of the defense. So,
what?
Yeah, that happened last year. That's a pure fact.
I didn't even.
And I think the idea from Belichick's perspective was he liked both these guys. He wanted to get them both this kind of cross-functional experience to make them even better coaches. But Patricia's no longer on the team, so apparently that experiment didn't work out. And Joe Judge is now the assistant offensive coordinator underneath Bill O'Brien.
Oh, yeah, from the Texans.
Well, formerly of, that's right, the New England Patriots. So Bill O'Brien cut his teeth working for Bill Belichick, and now he will again. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive coordinator this season appears to be one and only Bill Belichick.
All right.
So he's taking on the defense. But interestingly enough, 2 out of, I think, 6 listed defensive assistants are both guys also named Belichick. In other words, his kids. So at a certain point, he's been coaching for 47 years.
Yeah, that's wild.
His children are grown adults. And I think it's great when you can turn your NFL football franchise into a family employment agency. That's terrific. And the NFL is famous for doing that. But if there's one thing I know about human nature, it's that 2 things. One is that, yeah, certain traits do tend to run in families. That's common sense.
It's a given.
But also, just because your last name is the same last name as the head coach doesn't mean you have the same magical degrees of skill. And the degree of nepotism involved in the New England coaching staff makes me a bit concerned that Belichick might be losing his edge in terms of evaluating coaching talent. And I'm not saying his coaching abilities have declined at all, but you're only as good as your assistants.
You need a good support group.
You need a good support system. So one wonders, now you're going to see Sean McDermott for the Bills and Bill Belichick for New England, both of whom are now going to be taking on the defensive coordinator roles in addition to being head coach, and in Belichick's case, really involved in personnel as well. It's a lot to take on. And I'm not impressed with New England's coaching staff right now.
Yeah, what you've told me sort of leaves me a bit more concerned rather than not concerned, I'll say. I've always looked down on nepotism as a whole, but I mean, if they're good coaches, they're good coaches, so I can't get mad at them for that. But we'll just have to see. It just seems like Belichick is sort of just on a whim making these decisions that I don't think everyone is fully in support of.
Agreed. But, you win 6 Super Bowls, you get a lot of latitude. Yeah. And, who's to say? The fact is, he had some unconventional approaches on the path to winning 6 Super Bowls. So no one wants to question him, even when something seems like it doesn't make sense. Like last year. Now, let me get this straight. You're going to put your former defensive coordinator, make him the... Like, that was just, in my opinion, that was moved beyond experimentation or interesting into a realm of irresponsibility for that franchise. And sure, okay, they came close last year to making the playoffs.
Sure.
But one can't help but wonder, if you weren't trying to train two coaches with different skill sets, what might have happened if you'd have just done the old switcheroo there and let them play to their strengths?
I think Belichick was trying to figure out which one was going to be his replacement. I think he's like, I'm trying to sunset this, and I got to figure out which one of you can do offense and defense. And by the looks of it, neither.
The answer was neither. So it looks like Bill O'Brien's here, apparently.
Looks like he's our answer. Yeah.
Except that's not true, because he's got two kids on his defensive staff that, I mean, what father wouldn't be grooming them to take the reins?
Yeah, honestly. I'm not sure how the other coaches maybe feel about that. I'm not sure if there's any, animosity. But that's definitely looking into it in a way that we are not qualified to do.
Certainly not. But at this point, one can truly say, hey, the New England Patriots, for better or worse, that's Belichick's team. Full stop.
He's made it his own. My issues with the Patriots on the roster side of the ball is, so you have Mac Jones. He's shown that he can be a good quarterback, but he's also had the crowd chant for Zapp.
Of course. And Bailey Zappi in relief has been terrific.
Yeah. Has he been?
He's been pretty damn good, yeah.
Well, then, we'll see where he ends up. But so Mac Jones, he's shown moments, but he's also shown moments that make you question where the quarterback room is at. And by losing Damian Harris, you're putting the full sort of carry load here on Ramondre Stevenson. Now, I had him on my draft last year, my fantasy team last year, and he wasn't terrible. But, I mean, if he's splitting carries, it's a testament that he can't handle the full carry load of an RB1. So I don't know where their run game's going to go by losing Harris. I don't know if they've fully improved the arsenal for Mac Jones to work with. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, you could argue, is better than Jacoby Myers. I mean, statistically, it's there. But is that going to make their offense all of a sudden better than the Dolphins and the Bills?
Unlikely.
I don't think so.
The reality is that Mac Jones has not yet shown he's a superstar quarterback. That's the truth. He's not yet shown it.
He hasn't.
Now, he's shown an ability to be tough, but he's not shown an ability yet to be a superstar quarterback, because that is measured by one measurement: wins, especially this day and age.
Certainly.
So he hasn't shown the ability to do that. And then, secondly, the fact is, and if you want to really look at it just honestly,
right?
Tom Brady left New England, went to Tampa Bay, had a great roster around him, won another Super Bowl. Tom Brady left New England, and they've pretty much been in the wilderness ever since.
Yeah, they're sort of in the jungle, and we're not referring to the Bengals. They're not. There's no true their identity right now is Belichick. So they're trying to build around Belichick right now. Is what it seems like. And Belichick's trying to just build on himself by allowing more Belichicks. They're sort of just imagining a transformer of Belichick's now on the sideline.
So for all those reasons, I am deeply concerned about the Patriots. Can Bill Belichick regain the coaching wizardry that won him a Super Bowl as recently as just 5 years ago? And the answer to me is, based on what I've been seeing as a pattern over the last few years, seems unlikely.
It's not headed in the right direction, especially compared to what the other direction was, which was 6 Super Bowl wins.
Exactly. Hard to go up from that, though, in fairness.
It is hard to go up from that.
I'll tell you what, one franchise, though, that does have room to go all the way up, and that's the New York Jets.
Jets. Okay, so the New York Jets, we love them to death. We'd love to go into the additions first to say what we're all thinking. But we got to go with the losses first. We have to talk about who they no longer have on their team, not who they do have, which we'll get to, I promise. We have to go here first. So firstly, they lose wide receiver Elijah Moore. Not an incredible year, but also not a bad one. Good enough to be picked up by another team. Picks up 446 yards, an average of 12 yards a catch, 1 touchdown. So maybe he scores more with another team, but he wasn't scoring with the Jets.
And they certainly don't need him now, given the wide receiver pickups they've made in the offseason.
Certainly. Once again, that's an addition. We'll be getting to that, I promise. Another loss they had on their roster is defensive tackle, Sheldon Rankins. He had a pretty solid career with the Saints, went to the Jets. He picked up 3 sacks, a forced fumble, a couple tackles for loss. I think maybe not the numbers aren't jumping out, but the reason he's a key loss is because I don't love where the pass rush and the front seven for the Jets defense is right now. So losing him is more of a big deal than it would be for other teams. And the last loss that I need to talk about here is linebacker Quincy Williams. Brother of Quinnen Williams, who has 1 foot out the door right now with the Jets, not at OTAs right now. His brother already left. He picked up 100 tackles last year, 3 sacks, 14 were for tackles for loss. So he put up some good numbers, and he got out of Dodge. So maybe if his brother follows suit, then that front seven, the linebackers, the defensive line for the Jets, is in a bad spot.
It's true, but I would strongly suspect that the Jets are going to make that deal happen.
Yeah, I think they definitely want to. Certainly. I mean,
it's all dependent on things that we don't know anything about.
That's true. We're not anyone's agent here, so we'll never know. But their defensive line is all hanging on by a thread right now, and that thread is Quinnen Williams. We'll now get into the additions, starting with Allen Lazard. No, we're going to start with quarterback Aaron Rodgers, the man, the myth, the peyote. 3,695 passing yards, had a 64% completion percentage, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 91.1.
What a crappy season for the two-time MVP.
Yeah, he should. Yeah, no wonder they got rid of him. Who would want him?
Well, he got rid of himself. He self-eliminated from that program.
I think he's going down the Favre path. Hopefully he doesn't keep down it if these allegations are to be true with Brett Favre. But I think this is, it's a breath of fresh air for a man who's been with the same team for over about a decade or more.
He's been with he won a Super Bowl, keep in mind, after the 2010 season with Green Bay.
He was the quarterback for that game?
Yeah, he was. Aaron Rodgers was.
God, that makes me feel old for whatever reason.
Yeah, right. And at the time, everyone thought, well, this will be the first in a series of Super Bowl appearances for Rodgers, which has not proven to be the case. And now, a year out from a campaign that was a disappointment, one wonders how much gas does Aaron Rodgers have left in the tank?
Well, thankfully, they picked up some wide receivers to hopefully give him some gas. Picking up former Packers receiver Allen Lazard, 788 yards, 13 yards a catch, and 6 touchdowns.
One of his favorite targets last year.
One of basically his only targets, he would probably admit. And they also pick up other wide receiver Mecole Hardman from the Chiefs, 297 yards, just under 12 yards a catch, 4 touchdowns. So it's a weapon from Mahomes gone, and you kind of keep the only wide receiver that Rodgers could stand last year to help him out.
And at the same time, you still have on your roster that terrific rookie,
Garrett Wilson, entering his second year. Yeah, I had him on my fantasy, and tell you what,
you weren't disappointed.
I threw the dartboard. I nailed it with that pick.
You did.
I did. The wide receiver room definitely got upgraded. I can say that with ease and confidence. I think Allen Lazard is a great pick for Rodgers. I mean, there's clearly an established relationship, not implying anything, but they work well together on the field, and I think it's basically the only way you can kind of get the Super Bowl run going. Get the train to the Super Bowl, get the engine going.
Sure. Now, did they pick anybody up in the draft?
In the draft, they did pick some people up. Round 1, defensive edge, Will McDonald IV. Some people felt they were sort of forced into this pick. The Patriots did some crazy moves with the Steelers. Right. So not a ton of people were excited about the pick. But I'm not going to say that someone selected in the first round isn't good. Right. I mean, he was selected in the first round. He's got to have at least some impact, you'd imagine.
Yes.
I mean, his 2 best years in college, he had double-digit sacks and tackles for loss. So he's sort of made a name for himself in the backfield,
right,
which is the one of the main issues I have currently with how the Jets look on paper is that lack of pass rush and pressure. So I think he was a perfect fit. Maybe not the exact person some people wanted, but I think he's what the team needs. In round 2, they pick up a center, Joe Tippmann, out of Wisconsin. I absolutely love this pick. He's 6'6", which is really big for a center. Which is a slight disadvantage for maybe smaller nose tackles that can get under him for the leverage. But overall, this dude is smart enough and he's good enough with his hands that he's going to dominate against those bigger defensive linemen that he's likely going to be facing anyways.
And Aaron Rodgers is going to want that protection.
Draft a center from Wisconsin. I mean, it's basically Aaron Rodgers' neighbor. I mean, these guys, I think, will get along very well early on. I think he could play anywhere on the offensive line with his size. He could be tackle. With his speed, he could be a guard. I think the Jets will keep him at center just on where they need offensive linemen. But, I mean, if drafted by any other team, he could be anywhere on that line. He's got a lot of versatility.
That's a great pickup for the Jets.
I think it's a huge pickup for the Jets. It's my favorite pick they made, which isn't a discredit to Will McDonald. I just think that he's going to work extremely well with Rodgers.
Well, so the Jets are certainly going to take another stab at trying to improve their lot. And you forgot one of the key additions to that team, which is new offensive coordinator and former Denver Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett, who was the OC for
the Packers.
Yeah, indeed he was. And so he was brought in to really manage the Aaron Rodgers-led offense, and one would think that they could make that good thing happen again. That's the plan from the Jets' point of view, anyway.
I mean, just because Nathaniel Hackett didn't quite work as a head coach doesn't mean he wasn't a great offensive coordinator, and doesn't mean he didn't work well with Rodgers. He developed MVP years.
In fact, Denver has a great history of taking good assistants, making them crappy head coach, and then turning them back into the league as great assistants once again. And there's a few of those that I could mention. Most notably, most recently, Vic Fangio.
Yeah, they're sort of a testing the water team for coaches, which I can only apologize to their fan base.
Indeed.
But my insight on the Jets is, maybe they addressed it in the draft, but we still have to wait and see. That pass rush has to get better. They were 16th in the league in the run defense, and they've sort of lost some of the key figures that were making that better. Sheldon Rankins, who they lost, he was very much known in the run game. That was his role. So I think their run game's getting worse, their run defense. And with their pass defense being so good, what are running backs used for now? Helping bad pass games.
It's true. So, at least good running backs help.
Good running backs help bad pass games rather than just making a good run game. So because of that, you can try throwing in the first quarter, second quarter, things won't work out well. Now you can just run the whole second half against a tired defense, and you're probably going to be averaging about 115 yards a game against a team like this. If their defensive line doesn't kind of pick up the pieces.
On the other hand, you've got in head coach Robert Saleh a defensive mastermind.
He is defensive-minded, that is true.
And they did have a good defense last year, so I have a degree of confidence. And by the way, they did retain their second-year defensive coordinator, a guy named Jeff Ulbrich. So this will be his second year leading that defensive unit. And presumably that continuity will be helpful to that squad.
Absolutely. They had 42 sacks last year, which is a good number. I think they won't reach that. If they retain Quinnen Williams, I think my issues with pass rush are fully alleviated, and it's Jets to the Super Bowl.
Really?
Maybe a run for the playoffs. Sure. I think they'll be a contender within a loaded division.
Right.
So I think it's sort of dependent on that defense and that ability to bring pressure to the quarterback, which might force bad throws to a really good secondary. You can pick up the pieces. So I think you keep Quinnen Williams. My issues with their defense is mostly alleviated.
My issue with the Jets is that it is pretty unusual for a veteran guy to go to a new team and have success. Now, it happens. The most notable example recently being Peyton Manning.
I was thinking, Super Bowl 50.
Okay, that's one example. Okay, perhaps another great example would be Matt Stafford.
Yeah,
so that's another.
Jared Goff is kind of an example of this with the...
Maybe.
We'll see. There's a lot of hype for the Lions going into this. We're not talking about yes.
My point being is that a lot of times the reason that it looks like a quarterback has lost a step, which Aaron Rodgers looked like last year, is not because they have new receivers or, oftentimes it's because they've lost a step.
Sometimes a spade is a spade.
So to speak. And so, as a practical matter, the success of the Jets this next year is really going to be driven by whether or not Aaron Rodgers is still an MVP caliber quarterback. And I don't think we know.
We don't know, but I think getting Hackett might help unlock that. Hackett's made him an MVP before.
That's right. So why can't he do it again? And the answer is that now he's 39 and not 36. So
those 3 years
could make a big difference in terms of
very
performance.
Big difference. But I like the prospects for most of these teams in this division, which makes predicting the standings for where this division is going to go a little difficult. And I'm not sure if I'm even fully sold on my prediction here.
But give it.
I'm going to give it. I do see a repeat at the division winner. I see the Buffalo Bills going 12-5 to win the division. I think Week 18 is Bills-Dolphins. I think that'll be on par with Week 18 Jags-Titans. Winner wins division. I think it's very likely that to be the case because I have the Dolphins at second in the division at 11-6.
And making the playoffs.
Maybe securing a wild card. Yeah, absolutely. I think their chances through the wild card again like last year. But they will lose that Week 18 game against the Bills, so they cannot win the division. Number 3, I have the Jets. I think they also go 11-6.
But miss the playoffs.
I think they miss the playoffs, and the reason they're not ahead of the Dolphins, I think they get swept by the Dolphins. I think Tua cooks against that Jets defense. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is fully able to cook against the Miami secondary.
He's kept out of the kitchen.
He's working on appetizers, we'll say. Maybe 2 passing touchdowns, lose the game. So I think they get swept by the Dolphins, and for that reason, they fall at third in the division at 11-6, which gives you an idea of how strong this division is and how exciting it's all going to be.
I think so.
Which unfortunately leaves us last with the New England Patriots, who do go 9-8. They go above 500. They missed the playoffs again. The division's too hard for them right now.
And calls begin to ring through the land that Belichick has finally lost.
There's going to be some chittering, some chattering about what happens at head coach, perhaps.
Well, it's funny because artificial intelligence sees this breakdown a little bit differently.
Okay.
First of all, they think the Buffalo Bills, the artificial intelligence that I've consulted, believes that the Buffalo Bills are going to be dominant in the AFC East and finish with a 14-3 record, running away with the division.
14-3, okay.
They think artificial intelligence sources believe that the Miami Dolphins will finish at the identical record as your prediction at 11-6 and make the wild card.
All right.
So right now, artificial intelligence agrees entirely with your prediction, with the exception of they see the Bills as a stronger team.
They're a little bit bullish on the Bills.
And artificial intelligence is bullish on the Patriots.
Oh.
They think that they're going to finish 9-8.
Okay.
Improving slightly over the prior year.
Lining up with mine.
But still missing the playoffs for the second year in a row.
Okay.
And then they see the JETS. Artificial intelligence thinks the JETS are not going to be that good and predict a record of 7-10.
A repeat.
Essentially a repeat.
Yeah, they went 7-10 last year. I don't know what degree of confidence I had about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now that from my standpoint, I think, to me, this record and prediction makes pretty good sense all the way down the line. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is any good. And I hate to say that. I mean, of course, he's a Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
But
first ballot.
I don't think adding Aaron Rodgers, and he's become, especially over the last few years, a me guy. Why is he on the Jets? Because he wanted to go there. And so it rarely works out when you've got a guy who is pretty clearly not strictly about the team and really more about what he wants for the team. Yeah. That rarely works. And oh, by the way, he is pushing 40 years old. He's already tweaked a calf in training camp, and that's just walking through things. He's tweaked a calf. Wait till he gets hit by one of these defensive linemen for the Buffalo Bills.
He might have to go to the dark room for that.
He might have to go to the dark room for a few weeks.
Ooh.
And then who do you got to back him up? Oh, Zach Wilson.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Apparently, I did hear he had an okay day at OTAs.
Well, good for him.
So we're on the Wilson train.
All right. Good for Zach.
Next, Marcus Mariota.
So I think the Jets are well primed to implode this season, and I frankly agree with artificial intelligence on this prediction.
Well, if Aaron Rodgers is not as good, not to say bad, because I don't think you go from MVP to just dog water like that quickly. It's got to be a process to be bad. And
it is a process.
Injuries do help, I will certainly say, and we'll see how that happens throughout this year. I don't think this calf will carry out throughout the entire offseason.
Well, he's got a whole other body to worry about. Don't worry.
That's
it's not.
true.
He's got another calf. He's got pecs. He's got backs. He's got a head. He's got everything.
This is becoming educational. It depends. Yeah, I think we might see a Ryan Fitzpatrick. We might see some Fitz magic. The first 6-7 weeks, it's like, this guy could be MVP again. And then he's going to hurt his elbow. And then it's going to be, okay, he's out for 2 weeks. Let's see what happens when he comes back. And then it's just going to be a downward. I do see that possibility. I guess my prediction is his receivers are good enough he doesn't get hurt. The reason I'm so high on them is because I do like the receivers they got for him, and I do actually think Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator is a very good move, even given his recent controversy of not being a great head coach. So I'm prepared to oversell on the Jets. Not actually though, because sports betting is bad, and I'm not going to actually give my money to an organization just on a whim of, maybe they win.
Sure. But if you do want to put some money, you should take the under on win totals for the Jets, in my opinion.
Or donate to charity.
Better yet.
And I'm glad it's agreed with me on the Patriots. I don't see how they can do much better than a barely above 500 season, just with all the potentials and the coaching situation that I was not aware of.
Well,
I am not a fan of what's going on that sideline. I feel like I can't wait for Week 18. We look over on the Patriots sideline. You've got like 53 players and Bill Belichick just standing there. No other coaches or staff. He's just standing there, just staring at the field, just slowly, perhaps.
Well, in fairness, Sean McDermott is doing the same thing in Buffalo. He's taken on the defense as well. But I agree, it's to a different degree in New England. Now, I will tell you that one thing I don't think that AI got right is the Miami Dolphins, because they're in an analogous situation to the Jets, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
The Jets have an aging veteran who's on the decline, right?
Yep.
At least according to last year's statistics.
According to media.
The Dolphins have a young quarterback with a history of head injury. Neither team has a great backup option.
Yeah, we got Mike White and Zach Wilson. Sounds a little familiar.
It sounds familiar, doesn't it? And so, as a result, I think that the downside for the Miami Dolphins is pretty big if there's one bad play. So, as always, all of these... What I'm looking forward to, Brad, is our shows at the end of the year where we go back and we see how AI did. We'll see how smart you are, artificial intelligence.
And how smart I am, because I have all this written on paper. So a little bit of dread looking forward to that, but no, I'm mostly excited. I think this division, based on my predictions, will be very close, relatively elite, and certainly one to watch, and constantly be on the watch for in the hunt. I think we're going to constantly be seeing a mix of the Dolphins and the Jets in those late week graphics. So that's sort of my overall rundown of the AFC East.
Well, and I think it's been a good one.
I think it has been a good one. I think there's a lot of coaching issues in the AFC East, I will say. At least a lot of coaching questions and concerns. We've got tampering on one side, a lot of new coaches on one side, nepotism on the other side. You've got sort of a cocktail and a hodgepodge of potential controversy. Potential.
Sure.
But all in all, I think that will wrap up our breakdown of the AFC East for this upcoming 2023 year. Thank you so much for watching. You can choose to like and subscribe if you wish. Follow us on our socials on Twitter or anything that might make you happy like that. It would make us happy, certainly, for your support. Very much appreciate you tuning in. Tune in for our next episode. We will be covering the AFC West.
Go Broncos.
The Super Bowl champions, who are unfortunately not the Broncos. And we'll be going over perhaps who a possible new front runner for the division, or maybe we just give in to the dynasty that is currently the Chiefs.
But you'll have to tune in to find out.
You will have to find out, because we're not going to tell you right now. We're not going to do that. In fact, we're not going to